Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the iconic Regency Village Theater in beautiful Westwood, California. Today is June 16th, Sunday, 2024. It's Father's Day, and we want to thank all of you for being here and sharing this important evening with all of us tonight. This evening would not be possible without the great efforts of my good friends David Levy and David Rouda. Let's give it up for them.
I would like to introduce our debaters, or conversationalists, as the case may be. Aidan Doyle, who will be to my right here, is a third-year jazz and philosophy major at UCLA. And he has been an active participant in the encampment and the protests happening on the UCLA campus. I want to really give credit to Mr. Doyle for being here. We spoke to, please, absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Doyle was arrested last month by the police for various activities on campus, and we'll probably talk about those during the debate. He films and documents protests and discusses foreign policy, electoral politics, and a number of other issues on his social media channels. Mosab Hassan Yousef. He was born in Ramallah in the West Bank in 1978. His father is Sheikh Hassan Yousef, one of the founders of Hamas. And they were obviously responsible for the horrible atrocity that happened on October 7th, by any estimation. Mr. Yousef was linked to Hamas most of his young life. He faced intense horrors in his youth. He was imprisoned for 27 months in Israeli prisons. He talks about in his book, Son of Hamas, the torture that he went through, that he claims he went through. But despite all that, his worldview shifted at one point. And that's when he saw that in these prisons, Hamas prisoners were torturing their own people. So then he went on a 6-year journey and sought political asylum here in the United States. In Los Angeles, actually, he came. And he has obviously a very unique perspective, being from that region and part of that organization. So he's trying to make a new path forward for generations caught up in this cycle of violence. So I would like to welcome Mr. Doyle and Mr. Yousef. So, these are the ground rules. We're going to have a question, often a yes or no question, and whoever I ask the question of will have 2 minutes to respond. Vida is over here, and she'll have a clock here to remind you. And after your 2 minutes are done, the next person gets to speak for 2 minutes, and then we'll have a rebuttal for 2 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next question. So I'd like to start off by asking I'd like to ask you first, Mr. Doyle, what aspect of your personal life brought you to be an activist for the pro-Palestinian encampment on campus and worldwide, I'm assuming, and what things in your life do you think brought you to this point?
Sure. Well, for years I've wanted to be a political commentator, and part of being a political commentator is understanding and researching domestic and foreign politics. And in about August of last year, before October 7th, I just felt that it was imperative that I learned more about conflicts around the world, and I decided to research the Israel-Palestine conflict. By the time October 7th happened, I was already making videos and posting them on my YouTube channel about the conflict. And the more I researched, the more I became, the more pro-Palestine I became, and the more I saw a need for a Palestinian state.
Thank you. Mr. Yousef, I'm going to ask you the same question. I kind of led into this in the introduction, but could you tell us a little bit more about what led you specifically to become the advocate you've been for peace and for all the things you say?
First of all, good evening to everyone. I never claimed that I'm an advocate. I don't advocate on behalf of any cause. I think it's total idiotic to advocate on behalf of anything. I only represent myself, and I only speak on my own authority. And if I know, I say I know. And if I don't, I'm not afraid to say I don't know. So tonight here, I'm only representing myself, no one else. Not inside this room, not outside of this room.
Okay. All right. We had a debate up in Berkeley, and I asked this question, kind of like this question to start off with, and I'm going to ask it again here because I want to hear what you have to say, Mr. Doyle. What is a Palestinian?
Well, this is an important question. We're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So knowing what a Palestinian is vital. The PLO charter, and actually the Hamas charter in 2017, defines a Palestinian as anybody who lived in Palestine and their descendants before 1948 and who identified as Palestinian before then. But since then, since 1948, the idea of what a Palestinian is has changed. And in order to accurately answer the question, we have to understand what a nation is and if Palestine is actually a nation. A nation is made up of, as we know, of either an ethnic connection or a cultural or a connection to language to one people, which is, of course, manifested in a word, in this case, Palestine. In the case of Israel, it's Israel. In the case of any other nation, it is whatever you use to define that nation. Now, whatever you think about the way that the Palestinian nationality came to be and what a Palestinian and how the Palestinians came to identify themselves as Palestinians, well, as of right now, it's irrelevant because the Palestinian national identity is one of the strongest and most prevalent, really across the world, a lot due to this current ongoing conflict. And so a Palestinian is anybody who has heritage in the land who identifies as Palestinian. It's probably the simplest way of describing it.
Okay, thank you.
I thought for many years that I was Palestinian before I dropped that identity. And today I take it very seriously because Palestine or Palestinian is an ideology, political ideology that is affiliated with so much violence, aggression, violation of human rights, and it does not represent ethnicity. It's not a nation. It was never a country. It's not a religion. It's not a distinct language. All I know that it was a colonial entity that lasted 25 years, approximately 25 years, since 1922 to 1948. So a colonial entity. Jewish people, Druze, Arabs, Christians were called Palestinians prior to the establishment of State of Israel or the independence of the Jewish people and the partition plan. So even the Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir was considered Palestinian with a Palestinian passport issued by the colonial authority, the British Mandate of Palestine at that time. So if we are talking about ethnicity, then it's the Arabs. That makes a lot more sense. They have the language, they have distinct language, they have a religion, they have a culture. Druze are ethnic group, Jewish people are ethnic group, but Palestinian, this is an ideology.
Time's up. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Am I allowed to respond to that?
Yes, you are.
So the categorization of Arabs as an ethnicity is not entirely correct, because an ethnicity is not just based on genetics. But even if it was, well, Palestinians are not genetically identical to Lebanese, they're not genetically identical to Saudi Arabians, they're certainly not genetically identical to Arabs in Oman or Yemen. There is actually distinct genetic differences between all these people. But even if there wasn't, it's important to understand that a nation, upon its conception, is not based on ethnic boundaries. Instead, a nation is created, whether it be through administrative lines, the allegiance to the same leader, whatever. An ethnic base is then realized on top of that. So whether Palestinians are identical to Saudi Arabians or Jordanians, it's not really relevant. What's relevant is that a Palestinian national identity, of which nobody can deny, has formed. It started forming in the early 1900s, and it has been prevalent ever since then, and it is more powerful now maybe than it has ever been. But then to say that because a Palestinian national identity formed only in the early 1900s and that people didn't call themselves Palestinian before then, again, is irrelevant, because we don't say that Germans aren't German because people called themselves Prussian before 1871. Likewise, we don't say that Israelis aren't Israeli because Ashkenazi Jews in the Middle Ages didn't call themselves Israeli. It's kind of an irrelevant distinction, especially considering that a national identity, especially in terms of the nation state, only began, as an ideology, only began, 200 years ago? So to say that because Palestinians didn't call themselves Palestinian in the 1500s, it doesn't have anything to do with the Palestinian nationality.
I'm going to ask this of Mr. Yousef. If Hamas engages in actions that are considered violent or fatal, such as shooting rockets into Israel, breaching the Gaza border with Israel on October 7th to massacre Israeli civilians, launching rockets from areas of Gaza densely populated with Palestinian civilians, such as the recent 5-rocket launch from a humanitarian area in Gaza that was supposed to be off limits from the war. If they do that and then call their own civilians victims of genocide when Israel responds with bombs and military action that kill Hamas militants, as well as Palestinian civilians surrounding them, who are the Palestinian civilians the genocide victims of?
Hamas' strategy is to sacrifice civilians. This is how they got the world's sympathy during the first, second, third, and fourth Gaza wars. And it paid off because it delegitimized Israel. It made Hamas lots of money. It gave them power. And they became a recognized authority on a regional level, also on a global level, as a legitimate resistance movement. So since then, Hamas knew when they built the tunnels beneath one of the most populated areas in the region. You think they did not have an idea that civilians will pay the price? They knew that. And also, who said that only Israel is killing civilians in Gaza? In the confrontation, in the shootouts, in the booby traps, Hamas is responsible, number one, for the atrocities of Gaza. And I think this is the problem with the anti-Israel, pro-Palestine movement, that they are in denial. They don't want to condemn Hamas for actually operating from populated areas and putting the civilians in the ways of harm. What are we expecting from any army trying to remove a bunch of savages from power? And there is no other way but to send foot soldiers. There is no other way but to confront, while the savages hide behind their own children. In the morning, they kill Jewish children for revenge, and in the evening, they kill their own children for propaganda. And this is how they brought the world to its knees, by harming civilians. This is the weapon in Hamas' hands.
Could you repeat the question?
I'll just repeat the last part of the question. Who are those Palestinian civilians that Mr. Yousef was just speaking about and I described as being, for example, in the humanitarian area of Gaza where rockets were launched from recently? And who are those Palestinian civilians, the genocide victims of? When we hear the word genocide used by many pro-Palestinian demonstrators.
In a scenario where Hamas militants are putting children on the rooftops of military command centers, well, then those specific deaths are the responsibility of Hamas. But the deaths of the people in Tel al-Satan, right, the 40 innocent civilians who were killed by an IDF strike with no Hamas military center anywhere near, that is the responsibility of Israel. And Karim al-Sharif, back in the early couple months of the war, where 106 civilians were killed, again with no military center anywhere near, those deaths are the responsibility of Israel. And in any hospital that Israel bombs, in any safe zone, in any evacuation route, all of which Israel has bombed not only a few times, but repeatedly throughout the conflict, that is not only unjustifiable, not only illegal under international law because of, well, a lack of proportionality, oftentimes the negligence of dropping leaflets, which is actually the bare minimum according to international law, but also because it is asymmetrical civilian targeted warfare, which has been Israel's strategy since 2006, which constitutes a genocide. But it's not only the killing of innocent civilians directly by with their 2,000-pound bombs in Gaza and the targeting of civilian centers, whether Hamas is there or not. The genocide really precedes this, or at least the evidence of genocide precedes this, even in the past few years when Israel would deliberately target Hamas commanders' houses. But they would deliberately target Hamas commanders' houses not when only the Hamas commander was at home, but when the entire family was home. And keep in mind, Israel knew, because of their artificial intelligence and their advanced and sophisticated weaponry, when the entire family would be home. They decided to destroy the house when the entire family was home, when they had the option not to. And so the deliberate targeting of innocent civilians by Israel is evident. But it is not just that; it is also the starvation of the Gazan people. And time's up, but we can probably get into the evidence for the starvation and for the targeting of innocent civilians.
So just to be clear, your position is that Israel is intentionally targeting civilians in Gaza?
Yeah.
Okay. Your response? Nope. We're not doing that.
We'll probably get to that, though.
We will. And you're going to get to it, too, when you have your chance. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Yousef.
Look, I don't think Israel would target civilians intentionally. That's not possible. First of all, it would be totally idiotic. Why Israel would want to target civilians to create so much enemies around the globe. I was part of the Israeli operation for about 10 years. And many times there were civilians involved, and we canceled the operation. But the gravity of the situation in Gaza is completely different. When we have Hamas high-profile, dangerous terrorists who would hide in the tunnel for a long period of time, then Israel would have a shot. And now this Hamas top leaders go hiding behind civilians. Does that make them immune? This is a war. And in war, there are red lines that nobody should ever cross. But is there a war without collateral damage, without civilians dying in it, especially when the terrorists deliberately hiding among civilians, using hospitals, schools as operation rooms? I've been in those hospitals and in the schools right beneath in the tunnels. If I wasn't there myself, I wouldn't even speak about it. It's mind-blowing how Hamas constructed their entire operation beneath the most vulnerable areas on a purpose, because they wanted to drag Israel into such a dirty war to delegitimize Israel, to show that Israel is killing civilians. And what you are doing and the pro-Palestine doing here in the United States, you are falling into Hamas trap. There is no way Israel want to harm any civilian on a purpose. But Israel, do you think, is not aware that civilians being harmed? And it's a tragedy for Israel, what's happening.
Time's up.
I can respond to that if you'd like.
You'll probably have a chance in the next question because it's a similar topic. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, sure. The proposition that Mosab has put forth is that Israel is not intentionally targeting civilians. Unfortunately, that goes against the Israeli strategy in the region. Now, keep in mind that the whole idea behind Zionism, behind a Jewish state, is a Jewish majority. So I actually don't think that genocide is necessarily always going to be the conclusion of Zionism, because most of the time it's going to be something along the lines of ethnic cleansing. But if Israel wants to actually fulfill their goals of a Jewish state in the land, in the Holy Land, then ethnic cleansing is necessary for that goal. Unfortunately for Israel, and certainly unfortunately for the Gazans, is that creating a refugee crisis, which was the intention of Zionists like Jabotinsky and Theodore Herzl, and of course David Ben-Gurion, and many of the early prime ministers, and certainly Benjamin Netanyahu right now, creating a refugee crisis is impossible because of the refusal of the Arab states around them to actually take in refugees. The result is that the only way to perform ethnic cleansing is through deliberate murder of civilians, which is what Israel is doing right now. And the evidence for that, I've already outlined, that they target buildings where there are no Hamas military centers, but also they target buildings, whether there are Hamas militants in there or not, that the targeting of which is illegal under international law. It is the targeting of a population center, regardless of whether it's a military target, without regard to proportionality. We could probably get into proportionality at some point later in the discussion, but again, there is no excuse for the deliberate starvation of the population, which is one of the things that constitutes genocide, which nobody can defend and nobody can say it's because they don't want Hamas to survive or to thrive, because bread and water and cookies don't do anything for Hamas. They only allow the Palestinian population to not starve to death.
I'm going to, since we're going off schedule here, you can respond to that.
Right.
A couple of minutes.
So you say that you have evidence. How can you explain the 2 million Arabs who live in Israel? And if there was ethnic cleansing, where did they come from?
Well,
you got your opportunity. And do you think that the ethnic cleansing started on October 7th? You know, what was prior to that? Israel allowed the Gazans to come work into Israel, gave them job opportunity in the tens of thousands, and gave them all the rights of any manpower in the country. And that includes the West Bank. We have 2 million Gazans, but also we have 3.5 million West Bankers. And do you think Israel needed October 7 to happen so they can start the process of ethnic cleansing through bombing the shit out of people in Gaza? If there was an ethnic cleansing, it would have taken place over 70 years, and today you wouldn't find any Arab in the region. The ethnic cleansing actually took place in the Arab countries. Show me how many Jewish people are in the West Bank or in Gaza. Show me how many Arabs are in any Jewish in the Arab countries.
There are 400,000 Jewish people in the West Bank right now. They're settlers.
Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. Okay.
No, there's 400,000 in the West Bank.
Hold on. No. Aidan. No, don't. No interruption. Let him finish. You'll have your chance. You're gonna have plenty of chances.
He's talking about the Samaritans.
The settlers.
Yes, those are in Shechem. Well, those are under the protection and the authority of the Israeli Defense Forces. Okay, they have their own community. They are on the top of a mountain. They don't go into the Palestinian territories. I'm talking about any Jewish person in Ramallah, in Hebron, in Jenin. If any Jewish person go into these areas, they would be killed mercilessly. And also I'm talking about the Arab countries. I'm talking about where are the Jews in Jordan? Where are the synagogues? The Jewish people left the synagogues erected when they evacuated Gaza. You know what the Gazans did to the synagogues? They demolished them. First they burned them, they demolished them to erase every Jewish trace in the region. So when we talk about ethnic cleansing, we need to be very careful, because if your house of glass, don't throw stones on other people's houses.
Yeah, so well, you have to answer the question then. Was the removal of Jewish people from Gaza, was that a result of the IDF removing them in 2005, or is that a result of Hamas pushing them out? It was a result of the IDF pushing them out in 2005. Then you asked the question about are there Jewish people in the West Bank? Well, Area C is a part of the West Bank. It is an occupied territory. And there are 400,000 Jewish settlers there. I don't know why anybody would dispute that. That's just a fact. But then you talk about why are there still 2 million Israeli Arabs living in Israel right now. Well, it's important to understand what the goal of Zionism was. Because the goal of Zionism has never been to eliminate every single Arab ever. It's never been to even ethnically cleanse every single Arab from Palestine. The whole goal of Zionism, having a Jewish state, was to just have a Jewish majority state. And if you actually understand the roots of Zionism, you'll understand that it was totally acceptable for the early Zionists to have, say, 2 million Arabs living in Israel, as long as there were many, many, many more Jewish people. So Zionism is both conducive to ethnic cleansing and to the reality of the situation, which is, of course, ethnic cleansing, which is that 2 million Arabs have been allowed to remain in Israel. It's not about getting every last Arab out of Israel. It's more about maintaining racial supremacy over Arabs in order so that the interests of the state of Israel and the Jewish people are maintained. It bears complete disregard to the Arab people in Israel and all the Palestinians, all the Palestinians in Palestine. But even then, and we only have 30 seconds, so we can't get into all the evidence. We'll probably get into it later. But there's currently a covert ethnic cleansing campaign going on in Israel through discriminatory land policies, through things like the absentee property law in 1948, things like the admissions committee law, which don't allow Palestinians, Israeli Arabs in Israel to live in Jewish neighborhoods. We'll probably get into the evidence of all that later. There's ample evidence that Israel is slowly but surely discriminating against the Israeli Arab population in Israel in order to either force them out or in order to stop the population growth.
We're going to talk. In order to give this a little more back and forth, I'm going to ask a question that does deal with Zionism, since you just brought that up. And it was interesting to me that you said, I don't remember the exact word, but it sounded like you said there's lack of consideration of the Palestinians. Is that accurate, what you said?
Well, yeah, I mean, in Israel, they're called Israeli Arabs, but most of them identify as Palestinians in Israel.
Okay. So how do you, Mr. Yousef, define this term that is used a lot, which is settler colonial state? Israel, as to Israel.
Well, I think if there is any colonizer, there are the Palestinians. Those are the ones who are identifying with a colonial entity, and those are the ones who want the ethnic cleansing of the Jewish people from the land. This is the ideology of the real colonizers. It's actually made up by colonial power. This is where Palestine came from, and this is what attracted Yasser Arafat, and what has been attracting many fanatics to identify as Palestinians. But in Israel, I see all type of ethnic groups. They have equal rights. In fact, the Arabs in Israel have equal rights with less responsibility because they don't defend the country. Not all of them volunteer in the IDF, and it's not mandatory for the Arabs to serve in the IDF. And that's the riskiest job any ethnicity in Israel is doing. So the allegations of apartheid and ethnic cleansing, I think they are baseless. Decent citizens have equal rights. Those who show loyalty to the country, to the constitution, to the major interest of the country, not the ones who are troublemakers who belong to foreign entities and they serve the interest of any outside authority. So we can have stories about people who violate the Israeli laws, and therefore they are not treated like decent citizens. Basically, they are criminals or terrorists.
Well, there's a lot to respond to there. The first is the idea that for whatever reason, the Palestinian farmers and shepherds and the Palestinian farmers and shepherds early on in the 1900s are somehow settlers, or that they're descended from settlers, which is absurd because, well, if it was whatever Arab dynasties in the 600s that colonized Palestine, and therefore the Palestinians are descended from Arabs that colonized the land, well, it's absurd because that doesn't allow you to take away their human rights. But it's also absurd because 80% of Palestinian DNA is actually Levantine. So it makes no sense whatsoever to call them colonizers because in no sense of the word are they. But now to talk about the whether Israel is a settler colonial state, well, to colonize a land means, and this is just a definition, it means of a people to go to a land and colonize it. And to go to land and to settle there. Whether Jewish people are indigenous to the land or not, and whether Palestinians are indigenous to the land or not, that does not actually preclude them from being colonizers because they are of a people, of the Jewish people, who went to Palestine and settled there. And you don't have to listen to me, you can listen to the early Zionists who use the same verbiage of colonize, settle, colonialist. It's written there in their own words.
I have a couple questions I just want to ask you right now in response to what you just said. Wasn't it true that the word colonial or colonist had a different sort of meaning back in the early 1900s than it's taken on in recent decades with this idea of settler colonialism, which has been defined, as I've read, as agents of a mother country or sponsor that are coming to a foreign land to settle it, and not just that, that's just the first part, and the second part being, and to remove the indigenous population. So can you explain how you think Israel, or Zionism really, or Israel, is a settler colonial state with that definition?
Sure. So first of all, I actually forgot to mention something in Mosab's previous statement, which is that Israeli Arabs live with equal rights in Israel. Well, this is just patently untrue, and we can get into why that's untrue in a second.
But let's keep on that
let's
one
keep,
question.
Sure, because I'm sure we'll get to why Israeli Arabs are being discriminated against systematically in Israel. But to define Israel as a settler colonial state based on people who are foreign to the land, coming to the land and removing the native population, well, none of us, we all know what the Nakba is, which is the removal of 700,000 ethnically Palestinian people from the land of Palestine and forcing them out into either Lebanon or Jordan or the West Bank, which became Jordan, or Gaza, which became Egypt. So that absolutely did happen. And if you're talking about foreign to the land,
I didn't just say foreign land. I said mother country sponsor.
Oh yeah. So
yes.
If you look up the definition of to colonize, which any of you can do right now, it's of a people to go to a land and settle it. You don't actually need a mother country to colonize. You only need a mother country to become a colony, and nobody calls Israel a colony. So in that sense, just definitionally, it was and still is a colonialist entity. But in terms of being foreign to the land, it doesn't really matter how far back you can trace your ancestry to the land. I'm not indigenous to Africa, even though all people came to Africa. It's kind of a ridiculous statement.
Have you ever been to Israel?
No. No, but I'll say.
You say what?
No. What is happening to Israel and Palestine doesn't care whether I've been there or not. It's the reality, whether you like it or not. You can say what you want. You can say what you want. The evidence speaks for itself. The evidence speaks for itself, because when you murder innocent civilians, it doesn't care whether Aidan Doyle goes to UCLA or not. It cares whether innocent civilians are murdered or not. It doesn't care whether Mosab was born in Palestine. It cares whether innocent civilians were murdered or not. That's the reality. It doesn't matter where I come from or where Mosab comes from.
Please, people.
So,
I have to ask you. Sorry, Mr. Yousef. Nobody's dying in this room by hearing some words. So let's just take a breath, and we'll let them
Half
speak.
the people in Israel don't know the history of their own country. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Okay. No. Okay. Please.
No. You have to understand
Mr. Doyle, stop.
You have to understand that the actual reality, it doesn't matter where you come from. You can still understand what is happening. Because it doesn't care. Because it doesn't care. It doesn't care who.
Stop.
Whether somebody dies or not. If I'm born in the United States, it doesn't affect whether somebody dies in Palestine. You don't understand that. You don't understand that.
You're gonna get to ask him whatever you want.
We will have Q&As, guys.
Facts matter. Facts do matter. Facts matter. Facts don't change if I was born in Palestine or born in the United States. They don't change. They don't change.
Okay. And what's the source of your information? What's the source of your information?
Is Benny Morris okay? Is that a good source?
Give me a legitimate book, and I would like to know an author that has the legitimacy, that they have studied, and they have the authority to speak on the topic. Name 3 books as source of your information.
Yeah, sure. The Nation Forum by Rashida Khalidi.
By who?
Rashida Khalidi.
And who is that? I never heard of this woman.
He was actually he was part of the peace process in the 90s.
Okay.
But you don't know about him. That's fine. I still respect your opinion. It doesn't mean that you're wrong just because you don't know a single author, okay? That's fine. I can go on. Benny Morris, The Righteous Victims, 1948. Both of those books, does that satisfy you, or do you want me to keep on going?
Keep going.
Or do the facts change depending on how many books I've read? I could also talk about I think it's called Creating a Nation by Eddie Balabar, or you could talk about Shlomo Sand, a Tel Aviv author who wrote The Invention of the Jewish People, an Israeli Tel Aviv author. If your point is that what I'm saying is not right because I haven't read enough books, well, you're wrong on both counts.
First of all, all the books that you read looks like going only in one direction, to delegitimize Israel.
Do you know who Benny Morris is?
I don't need to know. I think you're just making up stuff.
Or the making of the Israeli nation.
And I think
Making of the Israeli nation. Do you know that book, or
are
you just uneducated?
Look,
what's the
what's
the answer?
Listen. What did I tell you from the beginning of this conversation? I don't need to read books to know my land.
You don't need to read books, but
I
do.
I write the books. I write them.
All right.
I live the experience. I am the author.
All the credibility you gained.
I am not a second-hand knowledge.
All of the credibility that you gained by living in Palestine was taken away from you when Israel put you on their paycheck.
Okay. All right. We're gonna.
Because
do you have evidence that I have a paycheck from Israel?
You worked for Israel for 6 years. It's in your biography.
What's your evidence?
So you weren't paid to work for Israel. You just did it willingly.
Well,
exactly.
Okay. First of all, if you want to take personal aim, I can take you on a rabbit hole that you will never get out of it.
Sure. Go ahead.
I have been patient and respecting you. You know why? Because you're just an arrogant student with no knowledge, with no life experience, advocating on a very dangerous cause, being a useful idiot in the hands of terrorists, creating trouble, putting encampment, breaking the law, advocating on behalf of a terrorist organization designated by the American law as a terrorist organization, makes you a terrorist. So if you want to talk about personal things, you challenge me for doing a legitimate work for a democracy to save human lives, and you want to reduce my effort to say that I got paid 10 years fighting and chasing after terrorists who blow up, killed Americans, Israelis, Arabs, Muslims, all type of people indiscriminately. Do you think you can sit here and judge me and tell me it's like you did for money?
When you say you're fighting for Israel, would you say that you're advocating for them?
I told you I only represent myself.
So you're not fighting for Israel.
And you don't have the authority to sit there and judge, tell me I took money or I did not take money. This is not your business.
No, you did take money. That's a fact, and that's fine.
This is not your business.
You took money from Israel, and that's okay. You're a propagandist for Israel. That's just a fact, and it's the reality of the situation. But again, I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times I have to say. I don't know how many times I have to say. I can speak from my own authority. I can speak from the authority of historians. I can speak from the authority of the thousands of Palestinians who live in Palestine, who are actually living there right now. Because at the end of the day, the reality of the situation doesn't care about Aidan Doyle or Mosab Yousef. Whether there's a genocide going on, which there is, it doesn't matter whether I was born in the United States or not. It is simply the reality. And you can check all my sources. You can go read.
Define a genocide. Define a genocide. You speak of what is genocide?
Oh, sure. The killing of a whole or a part of a population with intent. Well, are you happy?
With intent.
Do you not think I'd...
This is not what a genocide is.
Mr. Doyle, let me ask you something.
I'm sorry that you don't know what the definition of a genocide is, but that is the reality.
Let me ask you something.
With intent based on what? Based on their ethnicity, based on their religion, based on their culture?
Based on their national identity as Palestinians.
Well, Palestine is
But you can talk about intent. I mean, we can start naming names. We can go back to Emily Eliyahu, who wanted to nuke Gaza. We can go back to Theodore Herzl, who wanted to remove all of the Gazans from, all the Palestinians from Palestine. We could go back to the Mowing the Lawn initiative, which is high-frequency, civilian-targeted, asymmetrical warfare that targets civilian infrastructure.
Right. It doesn't
matter where you go.
Do you think?
It doesn't matter where you go. There is intent.
Okay, one moment. Do you think you are smarter than the judge of the ICC who just said that what happens in Gaza is not a genocide?
Do you mean the ICJ?
The ICJ, yeah. Do you think you are smarter than the judge?
Absolutely not. Do you think you're smarter than the judge?
I am not smarter than the judge. And the judge said what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide.
No. Well, actually, that's not true. What they said, well, for one, the determination as to whether a genocide is going on actually hasn't been deliberated, so you're just spreading misinformation. What they said was that the rights... What they said was that the rights of the Palestinian people, especially the rights of the people of Gaza, are at risk of, their rights to not be genocided are at risk of being infringed. And they said that in order for Israel to comply with international law in all 3 resolutions that they have released, they had to do a number of things. They had to stop targeting civilian population centers. They had to stop starving the population, which includes arresting the people who were stopping the aid from getting into Gaza, which they haven't done. And they also had to not invade Rafah. None of those 3 things they have done. And so when Mosab says that Israel is that the ICJ has said that Israel is not committing genocide, they made no such determination. The actual determination will come out in probably 2 or 3 years.
You talked about Herzl as one of your people, as Zionist and founding people of Israel, as intentionally removing Arabs from the area. And there's I was reading about this because Mark Lamont Hill at the Berkeley debate brought up the same point. And I looked it up, and I read that Theodore Herzl had a famous letter to an Arab notable, Yusuf Zia al-Khalidi, and he wrote, quote, "Who would think of sending Palestinian Arabs away? It is their well-being, their individual wealth that we would increase in bringing our own." So how do you jibe that with that he was an intentional, ethnic cleansing or genocide?
So if you actually read other letters, what he said was, and look, it wasn't actually as bad as what's happening, to be fair to Theodore Herzl. He was actually what's known as he was a political Zionist. He was fairly liberal for the time. He believed that, he said in other letters that we need to stop giving them jobs, we need to make sure that they don't have a livelihood here, and that we need to make sure that in other Arab countries that, that they do have a livelihood in order to convince them to leave. So it was a sort of soft ethnic cleansing, if that makes you feel any better. But then you also mentioned how Theodore Herzl said that we would bring civilization to the Palestinians. Well, this is reminiscent of Christian missionaries who talked about Africans as if they were savages, as if they were uneducated, as if they needed Christianity and Western civilization to be brought to them so that they could tame them. It is an extremely racist ideology, that one that was inherent to Zionism, as they believed that they would be bringing civilization to the Palestinians, that they would be improving their lives. And when in actuality they removed them, they killed them en masse, and they put them in concentration camps.
Okay, so how do you judge, and I want to hear what you say, but how do you reconcile that statement with the Nakba claim? And it's not a claim, it's a word that is used as a catastrophe by the Palestinians when they left the land of what is now Israel at the Declaration of Independence of Israel, and they were largely in camps in Jordan, refugee camps in Jordan, and I think Gaza, and now those are villages. What do you make of the fact that Israel was attacked immediately upon the declaration of its independence, and that it's pretty clear in the record that these Palestinian Arabs were told by these Arab countries surrounding them to leave lest they be harmed during the attack? What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, so the countries of Egypt, the countries of Jordan, the countries of Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, the countries that attacked during 1948, they're not Palestine, they're actually different countries. But then the assertion that Palestinians left during the Nakba willingly, well, some left willingly because they were being harassed and terrorized in the streets by the Irgun and the Lehi and the Haganah, but over 400 villages were destroyed, hundreds of thousands were forced out. But it wasn't just through force and through brutal terrorism that these groups inflicted upon the Palestinians living in Palestine at the time. It was also through legal means, with the absentee law, declaring any house that was empty to be declared the state of Israel's, and that they then moved Jewish tenants in, or through the cancellation of the Ottoman Empire, the permits that were given during the Ottoman Empire, most of which were Palestinian homes. When this happened, the Palestinians were evicted and Jewish tenants moved in. So, I mean, sure, some left willingly, but you have to ask, was it willing, or were they being terrorized and then they decided to leave? Now, then also the claim that the Arab leaders told Palestinians to leave because they'd be able to return later. Well, that's true, but it accounts for a couple thousand, maybe 20,000, as compared to like 700,000.
Where are you getting that fact from?
What were your numbers?
Well, no, what I'm asking you, where were you getting that fact from?
It's just general knowledge.
What? Well, I mean, it's important. It's important. It's okay.
If you have a more accurate
no,
number,
I'm not. It's not. This is not my. I'm not debating here. I'm just asking questions.
Oh, sure. So, well, the number is 700,000. Do you agree with that number?
No, I do agree with that.
The number of a couple thousand, if not tens or 20,000s.
Okay, but you do agree, right? You do agree that it's really, really important when we're saying these things. Let me finish. Let me finish. Because we've been listening to you. It's really, really important when you make these statements, which are affecting people's lives in the world, that we are accurate in our facts. And so I'm not criticizing you right now. I'm just asking you where your source is. I really want to know.
No, if you have a more accurate number.
Okay, thank you. It's okay.
Well, how much is it? How much is it? Because was it 700,000 that were told by the Arab population?
Mr. Yousef might be able to tell, and an academic in the audience or somebody who knows might be able to tell. But
no, because it's important to recognize that just because I don't remember a source from a research that I did 8 or 9 months ago doesn't mean that the reality isn't the case. Okay. But if it was 10,000, well, that's important. That means that only 690,000 Palestinians were forced out of their homes. Well, it doesn't make a big difference.
These are hypothetical situations, but we really want to deal with facts when we're dealing with human lives. Let's, Mr. Yousef, do you have a response to what he's been saying? Yeah. You'll ask him that afterwards, right? Yeah, keep your questions. Remember your questions. Write them down.
Look, people who are in the territory, they have ownership to their property. Nobody's coming to take their property from them. My father is a Hamas leader. Israel never came and said, oh, you Hamas, give me your house. Our neighbors, our entire town, people own their property. They've been there before I was born. They're still in their households. Nobody's forcing them out of their houses. Prior to the Palestinian Intifada in 1987, we were able to move freely, travel outside the country, go to Tel Aviv, go to the beach, go everywhere. We did not have even one checkpoint. Things only changed when Yasser Arafat pushed the indoctrination of Palestine on the kids, shutting down the schools, exactly what you are doing here on campus, shutting down the school and building encampment to disturb the student life for the sake of Palestine, a foreign entity that you don't understand, that you've never been there, that you think that it ever existed, that you think that there is occupation, that you think you know better than the judge, and you say that there is a genocide, that the verdict is going to come sometime in the future, God knows when. So you created this narrative in your head based on YouTube and TikTok videos. Then you claim that you educated yourself from legitimate resources. But I tell you, we as the people, the Arabs who live in that land, nobody ever took my house, even though we are Hamas. And nobody has the right to take your property. You have your name to it, then it's yours. And there are millions of people like this. So all your claims are baseless. And I invite you to visit the place to begin with, so you can have a direct experience.
I'm going to move on.
I can respond to that.
You can respond to everything. You are Einstein. Such an arrogant generation.
You know, I don't think that helps. I think that.
I think it does.
I don't think it does.
I think just an idiot.
And he's not an idiot. He's obviously a very intelligent guy.
So you can call me TikTok watcher. You can call me Gen Z. You can call me arrogant. What you can't do is respond to the facts.
What facts?
Well, you know,
what facts?
To be fair, we need facts, and that's what I was kind of asking you about. So.
Well,
the fact that I was born there and you weren't? The fact that you have a second-hand knowledge?
No, the fact that
The fact
Israel,
that you think saving human life is treason?
No, not the fact of where either of us were born. I don't think the reality would change if I was born in Zimbabwe. The reality would change. The reality would change if I was born in a different country. That's nonsense. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. No. What the facts that you can't respond to are the deliberate targeting of hospitals that do not have military centers in them, like Karim al-Sharif, like Tel al-Satan, like the evacuation routes that were bombed by Israel. And this is not according to me. This is according to UN.
All right, listen, Mr. Doyle. Let me just take control here for a second. You made your point. You made your point. I don't know if you had something to say just quickly in response to that, because we gotta move on.
Okay, targeting hospitals. It's evident. And I told him that I have a first-hand experience, but it looks like no matter what I say, he's going to say, you are paid. You're on a payroll. You're advocating on behalf of the Zionists. And he will continue to be in his denial for eternity. This is a phenomenon of useful idiots that they're advocating on behalf of a dangerous organization. They're bringing chaos, intifada, to the United States of America because the government is not taking care of this business. Naturally, the Department of Homeland Security would persecute anyone who's given a material support to a terrorist organization. This is the natural environment. But now it looks like it grows so wild that people like him has the audacity to talk to someone who risked his life on a regular basis to save human lives. This is what we did. I lost my entire family, the wealth of Hamas. Did you know that I managed Hamas money? Do you know how much money is that? You would sell your mother for that kind of money. Hamas money was under my authority. If I wanted the money, I would have stayed there. You tell me about a paycheck coming from Israel. You're totally mistaken, son. At the beginning, I respected you and I gave you the opportunity because we have to build a dialogue, but it looks like you only have accusations and you're contradicting yourself. And when an eyewitness come to you, you don't have even facts, and you're very disrespectful to some of the hostages in the audience.
Look,
you're very disrespectful.
I'm very sorry for calling you a TikTok user, arrogant, an idiot. No, that's what you called me. I'm sorry. That was actually the personal insults that you used.
This is what you are.
I haven't used any personal insults towards you. All
right. Let's just take a breath right now. So I'd like to go a little bit off script here before we get into question and answer, and I would like to invite up her, if she will, Moran Stella Yanai, who was released by Hamas as a hostage in Gaza in November, I believe it was. Come over here. Stella, I want you to sit here. I'm going to go over there, okay? Because I'd like you to sit with Mr. Doyle and Mr. Yousef. And you can take my microphone for right now.
You can sit next to me. I'll sit over here.
You just made me take a huge breath before that, because I really want to talk to you from an eye level, you know? No, it's okay, it was only for him. It was not for you.